Matrix Encryption, Cryptoethics, and the Social Contract Theory, September 5th, 2025. Okay, so the inspiration for this presentation comes from something that I read recently about the social contract, which said that the social contract is about the people giving up their liberties in exchange for security. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was just something about that definition that didn't sit right with me. And so I let it go and I forgot about it. And then I remembered it a couple of days later, and I'm glad I did. And I basically decided to do a little digging, and lo and behold, the source of that definition of the social contract, because see, the social contract theory isn't hard science, it's social science, and so it doesn't necessarily have like one right definition. But the definition that I heard was attributed to Thomas Hobbes, who wrote The Leviathan, as some of you may know. Hobbes was a pessimist, or at least what can be characterized as a pessimist on human nature. He believed that man was constantly in a state of war or conflict, and that the government, and more particularly the monarchy, was necessary in order to control man. And this is starkly contrasted with John Locke, who was a little bit later contemporary of Hobbes. Their lifetimes did overlap somewhat, as you can see, and it was Locke who presumably read Hobbes and was well aware of his doctrine, who then went on to formulate his own social contract theory, which was quite different, to say the least. Okay, to contrast the views of these two thinkers, we will say that Hobbes believed that humans in a state of nature were brutish and violent, and therefore had to surrender nearly all of their rights to an absolute sovereign in exchange for peace and security. His contract justified authoritarian rule as the price of order. And as I said previously, Hobbes can be characterized as pessimistic, and I don't know how much more pessimistic it can get than his view. By contrast, Locke believed that humans had natural rights, including life, liberty, and property, and that these were given to man by God or nature, and that no government could rightfully take those natural rights away. In the Renaissance period, the terms nature and God were actually used interchangeably by some philosophers, and so it's not so much of a difference as one might think to say the term given by nature or given by God. And so the social contract of Locke was conditional in the sense that people consented to government only so long as it protected those rights that they already had. If government became tyrannical, then the people retained the right to overthrow. And so you can clearly see the distinction here. On the one hand, Hobbes believed that man was brutish and essentially evil and needed to be reined in like a wild animal, whereas Locke believed that man had God-given natural rights, you know, nature's God, natural rights, natural law, and that these rights, the rights couldn't be taken away. And as far as the social contract was concerned, it wasn't a matter of necessity, oh my gosh, man is evil and must be controlled. It's man has rights from the get-go, and the social contract is conditionally entered into by the governed, consent of the governed. And I don't know how much clearer the distinction can be. Okay, let's go ahead and really drive the point home that Hobbes wasn't just pontificating in a vacuum. He really had incentives to support an authoritarian view of government. And so Thomas Hobbes was bound to monarchy both personally and intellectually. His chief patron was the Cavendish family, particularly William Cavendish, the Earl of Devonshire, and Hobbes served as the tutor, served as a tutor to William and later to his son, and this patronage tied him to the royalist elite. During the English Civil War, Hobbes fled to Paris and became associated with the exiled royal court of Charles II. And it was during this time that he wrote the Leviathan, when he wasn't even in his native country and was with the exiled monarchy during the English Civil War that was about fighting off the monarchy. Interestingly enough, after the English Civil War, as I understand, the monarchy wasn't defeated, right? Like the British Empire still existed for the American colonies to revolt against, but the major result of the English Civil War was that the British ended up with a parliamentary monarchy rather than just a monarchy. So the monarchy lost some power, but it wasn't dissolved by any means, as we know. I mean, even today, you've still got the royal family. And so Hobbes' core claimed that without a sovereign power to impose order, human life would be terrible. And this neatly justified the restoration of monarchy after the turmoil of the war. So yes, in a sense, Hobbes was doing intellectual service for the crown, producing a rationalist defense of absolute sovereignty at a moment when monarchy was being questioned, even overthrown. He dressed monarchy not in divine right, which was the classical justification. Remember, all monarchs claimed divine origin. My dad was an alien from Mount Olympus or something. And so all over the world, it's the same way. Divine right. And so he tried to justify authoritarianism logically. And so he wrote the Leviathan. And let's see. So, but in social contract reasoning, rather than divine right, a clever rhetorical shift making submission to authority seem logical and even voluntary. In contrast, Locke's later contract theory gave people an escape clause from tyranny. That's why Hobbes became beloved by authoritarians, while Locke lit the torch for liberal democracy. And so I'm reminded yet again of when I just read this, definition of social contract theory in America of, oh, social contract theory is about people giving up liberties in exchange for security. No, that is not correct at all from an American perspective. And to see that in American media is, disturbing. Now let's dig a little deeper into Locke's social contract theory. For Locke, people in the state of nature had natural rights, as we said, including life, liberty, and property. And this is literally the direct inspiration for Thomas Jefferson's inalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. And so let there be no question who the legitimate authority on the social contract theory is as far as America is concerned. There was a little difference in the fact that property was included in the draft of the Declaration of Independence, but was later taken out and replaced with the pursuit of happiness. And so I personally believe that property, and more particularly land, is a God-given natural right that has been stolen from the American people, but that's another story. The people, according to Locke, weren't automatically in a perpetual state of war as Hobbes thought, but there was insecurity, instability, the potential for conflict in people enforcing their natural rights. So this would be like vigilantism, tribe versus tribe and that sort of thing, blood feuds. And so the contract itself was that the people consented to form governments, not to give up their rights, but to better secure them. See, this is the key difference. This is the crux of it. It's not about giving up anything. It's about you have rights inherently, and how can we better protect those rights? And that government was only legitimate insofar as it protected the natural rights of the people. There's, of course, a rebellion clause, which is what was used by the American colonies in the revolt from the British parliamentary monarchy, right? It was seen as a legitimate and legal dissent, a legal rebellion, okay? The people had the right and duty to withdraw from a government that had broken its contract to protect the rights of the people, the inherent inalienable rights. And so in Locke's view, the social contract wasn't about sacrificing freedom in exchange for order, but was about institutionalizing freedom itself by creating mechanisms to secure freedom better than isolated individuals would have been able to do on their own. All right, everybody, that's pretty much the end of our makeshift history lesson. I hope you have been enjoying yourselves so far. I hope you've made it this far into the presentation, as now we're trying to pivot into crypto ethics. And just as a side note, I am trying to make this as interesting as I can. I I don't consider myself the best public speaker. And when I turn on the camera, when I hit record, I'd say like maybe 25 or 30% of my ability to articulate my ideas is just chopped right off. I'm very self-conscious, somewhat of an introvert and empath, and this isn't the easiest thing to do, but I am trying to forge my way through it. And so basically, in order to pivot into crypto ethics, we will ask the question, so how does social contract theory apply to the present day and age, and more particularly to the burgeoning field that I invented? You can look it up. Go type right now, go type in crypto ethics. You won't find anything on it, okay? This is new, and that's all I do is come up with new ideas. And so how does the social contract theory apply to crypto ethics? Well, and just, one sentence disclaimer, it's a pretty self-explanatory definition. It's the ethics of cryptography, the ethics of securing the internet and the way that internet and communication infrastructure is secured. And so the way I see it, it's a near perfect parallel between the American Revolution and what we're seeing today. The founding fathers were fed up with authoritarianism. They were fed up with political works and the thinkers that tried to justify authoritarianism. And today, cryptography and the protection of data is highly centralized, aka authoritarian. No one's data is their own, and at least, that's what the large corporations try to make you agree to their user agreements, where your freedom and your privacy are just thrown right out the window. And digital authoritarianism and the invasion of privacy have become the norm. Even when centralized privacy solutions try to appear unimposing and unassuming, claiming to not have access to your data on centralized platforms like Facebook Messenger or Gmail or iPhone SMS or Proton Mail even, that that all hold all of the user's keys. This is akin to a wolf donning sheepskin to appear less threatening to real sheep, okay? And the solution is a social contract 2.0. We believe we need a digital social contract to be forged that will extend natural rights to the digital realm. We've seen, Zuckerberg at congressional hearings about user privacy. These are half measures. Facebook's response was to upgrade Messenger security, for one thing, to end-to-end encryption. But if you look up the definition of end-to-end encryption, it actually means that only the sender and receiver have the key or keys required to access the data. And so just the fact that your messages are automatically encrypted for you, that doesn't make it end-to-end encryption. This is a gilded cage, pretty much, or not pretty much, like literally, because I don't know of one. Name me one centralized big business company that lets you control your own keys and secure your own data. It doesn't exist. And so the modern internet infrastructure has placed us into a gilded cage, which is pretty, but is still a cage and needs to be flown, escaped, fleed. We need to flee the cage. And that is where we stand on this issue. Okay, as we bring this presentation to a close, let's just take a minute and ask the question that we probably should have asked earlier, but what is a natural right to begin with? Well, very simply, a natural right, apart from the definition that we read earlier about it being rights given by God or nature, because that's a bit vague, to clarify things, natural rights are simply everything that you have in a state of nature. And when you think about that and what it means, like, don't think about the sentence, like think about being in what the meaning of the sentence conveys, the meaning of the definition. You're in a state of nature. What do you have in a state of nature outside of the influence of modern society? And when you think like that and meditate on it, it should start to become clear that the list of natural rights given in the Declaration of Independence is grossly incomplete. I mean, the pursuit of happiness doesn't really mean squat, because it could mean anything. And that's a problem. Ideologically, we can suppose that Jefferson probably left out property from the Declaration of Independence. In other words, like left Locke's original language out because he felt that it would have caused too much tension with land rights and slavery, of course. That's a big one, because at the time slavery was legal, and it would continue to be legal for many decades, I believe, beyond the Declaration of Independence. And so, yeah, it was watered down, and I feel it was left way too vague and unclear. And so we can think that property, just from a natural rights standpoint, private property is obvious. The spear that you make, the bow and arrow that you make, the deer skin that you turned into your garment. All of these things that you can make and acquire yourself without infringing on others are clearly your God-given natural rights. Okay, so property is conspicuously absent from the explicitly stated natural rights, but that's okay. I suppose it's okay for us to just keep going with the conversation and to say that real property is a natural right. I mentioned this earlier, and I thought that it was worthwhile to bring it back up because all higher mammals are territorial. everything from pigs to wolves to primates and everything that you can imagine in between, up to and including people, are territorial. And it's not a matter of buying and selling to have land. Like, you literally have to have land, otherwise you're not free. And man is not free in the current era. And of course, privacy is a natural right. This is the one that we have to extend to the digital realm, and say that privacy you obviously have in a state of nature. Like, if anyone comes and is like spying on you and eyeing your land, that's aggressive. It's seen as aggressive. And yeah, etc. And so all those things are natural rights. We're not going to say that natural rights are completely expounded here, but more or less they are. And as I had said, the idea was to, or rather the solution to the problem of the loss of privacy in the computer age was to come up with a social contract 2.0 or 3.0, as the case may be. If you let Hobbes' version be 1.0, Locke 2.0, well, a couple hundred years later, here we are, like 300 years later, we need to rethink the social contract in the computer age, the digital age. And but rather than force private companies to comply with the totality of natural law, because that's never going to happen, the best thing we can do is to write the social contract in our hearts and to stop using these platforms, these companies, stop giving them our data willingly, and bypass all their back doors, because that's the other thing that I didn't quite yet mention, but should be obvious. Like, the reason why they keep the keys from you is so that they can spy on you without you knowing it, and then just tell you that they're not spying on you. That's what you should assume. They have back doors in place for law enforcement purposes, but at least that's the story, but they end up with just everybody's data, and they make money off of it too. Like, you're being exploited, and it's not a matter of like, oh, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then it doesn't matter. No, you need to think about principles, first principles, and from a first principles perspective, life, liberty, private property, real property, and privacy are all guaranteed. Things that you can draw a line and say things that aren't guaranteed are like unlimited food. You have access to food and the ability to get your own food in nature, but in a state of nature, on an unlimited food supply is not guaranteed. And so you can keep things in perspective like that. And so we need to bypass all their back doors, stop using these platforms, and decentralize. Distribute cryptographic solutions at the local and individual levels. We can't change the centralized infrastructure from the inside, but together we can build a better world, and hopefully that will influence the centralized structure of the modern communication internet infrastructure, to make it more adherent to natural law. And I would just encourage you to buy matrix encryption products. Some of them are available on our website, matrixencryption.com. You have to create an account and log in to get to the products page. But if you want the most up-to-date version of our software with that is non-deterministic, then I would encourage you to reach out to me by email at 777 Technologies LLC, and we can get you squared away with a purchase of our patented software. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking with you in the near future. Take care.